Hey guys, you ever been to Burning Man?
No.
You're going to be on fire after this show, let me tell you. We're going to erect an effigy to Microsoft and set fire to it.
Going to have to. And for all you listeners out there, the end of this show is going to be awesome.
So, what do we mean by that? I guess this show is all about Microsoft vulnerabilities.
There's a lot to talk about in their world right now.
Yeah. But first, let's visit our old Asian friends, China and India. China first.
So China has made sudden warnings about U.S. hackers.
What?
And done some saber rattling. But there's indications that their data is dated and their attribution is not solid. So this is more of the information war. Where countries like accuse each other and there's false flags and there's no meat on the bones.
Okay. Good question, Patrick. So we see this where the U.S. has constantly called out by name, people, individuals in the PLA, which is the People's Liberation Army of China. And that's the group that does all the cyber hacking and exploitation of infrastructure and whatnot here.
Naming and shaming.
Right. And, even to the point where, brought up charges on them, that sort of stuff. Not that anything is going to come of it, but, it's an interesting move. So are we seeing now China saying, hey, if you guys are going to do that, I'm going to do that too? I mean, what's the whole point in doing this at this point?
So right now we also have on the world stage, we have a lot of the world has come after Russia, but a lot of the world has sat on the sidelines.
Right.
And so China is seeing an opportunity to lead the part of the world that's not willing to follow the West. And so one of the ways they do that is to cast aspersions. Now, what they're talking about is stuff that was leaked in WikiLeaks in 2017, including the decryption keys for some old malware.
Uh-oh.
So the report is super jaded. It's 5 years old. The decryption keys, the same as what was in WikiLeaks in 2017. And they're trying to draw this crooked line to say the United States is attacking Chinese organizations.
Right.
Even though none of it's current data.
Well, and it's all stuff that's publicly available.
Okay, so Patrick, does this mean that the reason that all of this is publicly available is because they don't want to tip their hand as to all of the deep, dark, secret stuff they're in the middle of that they know about? Like, they don't want us to know what the capabilities are. If they called out, let's say I was the head of an advanced red team, APT team that was hacking into, China.
Mm-hmm.
And the Chinese knew that. And they didn't want to call it out because it's not something that's made public yet. So they don't want to tip me off. Is it like, hey, we're going to just talk about really old stuff that's in the public because we're going to hold these other cards close to our vest? Or is it like, no, this is all the data they have?
So that's the $1 million question. But
true.
There really are very few instances where China has come up and said, we know that this, cyber organization of the U.S. military has hacked us, or that a cyber criminal syndicate has attacked them and that's based in the U.S. The reason for that is there's not a lot of criminal cyber syndicates based in the U.S. because the laws are enforced.
Right.
So most of them are not in the U.S. They're elsewhere. They're operating elsewhere. The ones that do operate in the U.S., they get arrested.
Yeah, it occurs to me that it also could be political because China is getting ready to square off over Taiwan, isn't it?
Some people believe right now it's anyone's guess. There's some serious potential that what's going on with the economy in China and the zero COVID policy and everything else is undermining Xi Jinping to the point that he doesn't get the third term that he's going for in October. If everyone assumed a year ago that he was going to get a third term and he was going to then become like dictator for life. That's now in question. And if that doesn't happen, then it really depends on who comes in after him. But there's been a lot of saber rattling.
But what I mean is, the saber rattling may be just to add to the list, the grievances against the United States. So when we come to negotiate about Taiwan, they have a list of things on their side that they can point to.
Yeah. A lot of people have pointed out that if you want to do an amphibious assault, the last thing you would ever do is announce it. The amphibious assault is one of the hardest things you can ever do. Yeah. And announcing it is a good way to lose half that force. So I think that it is more for domestic consumption
Yeah,
it's trying to like I just said,
Yeah.
the people in charge want to get nationalistic feelings going so that they will support the current administration. One of the ways to do that is to say, look, they're attacking us. No one's looking at the detail that the data is from 2017 and 2013, respectively, and there's no real proof. Back to Dwayne's question, I like to think, I have no evidence of this, but I like to think that the reason China doesn't say, hey, we caught the U.S. hacking us is for two reasons. One is we don't just willy-nilly hack them the way the Chinese do, because we're not after their trade secrets the way they are for ours. And when we send people in, we're sending in real, true professionals, and we're going after specific things. We're not making the mistakes. We're quiet. It's more like the diamond thief that only makes one theft every 2 years, much less likely to get caught than somebody who knocks over every gas station they pass.
Are you calling out the entire PLA cyber?
I am. I'm not going to China anytime soon. Well, not voluntarily.
All right, so we switch countries now and talk about India. What happened in India and with the response to it?
So this is interesting because this is the same region. India is also trying to shore up their rules and their stuff, and something that seems very common sense. The government has put in some rules that says, hey, when you get hacked, you have 6 hours to report it. And that sounds on the face of it like a really good idea. Yeah, of course. I don't want people sitting on this for 3 days. And, how dare they sit on this information? But the problem is, simple solutions look like good solutions until you actually understand the way the things work.
What if you don't discover it for a month?
Well, it's about discovery. But the problem is that you can do serious damage and you can trigger harmful effects by disclosing too early. So if I'm in the network and you disclose, I may know there's ransomware, but I haven't gotten it out yet. Well, that's a breach. I've been breached. I have 6 hours. I can't get the ransomware out in 6 hours. So if I disclose and the command and control is still connected to the ransomware, they can then execute and destroy all the data.
Wow.
Whereas if you give me a more reasonable time to report, it won't change the outcome, but it will change whether or not I can recover or not.
Sure.
And so there's a big, it's kind of like when law enforcement in the US and the FBI said all encryption has to have a backdoor. And the technical world was like, no, if there's a backdoor for you to use, anyone can use it because it's discoverable.
Right.
And they're like, well, just don't tell anybody about it. And I'm like, you don't understand. Things are discoverable. The code is published code. The code is out there. Well, don't publish the code. When I give you the executable, you get the code.
Right.
But a lot of people don't understand that.
Right.
That, if I write a program and I give it to you, I'm not going to give it to you in a way that you can just like read easily, but there's lots of programs that will decompile it and turn it back into code.
Or you could step through the code while it's in memory running.
Exactly.
Just watch it run. Yep.
Yeah. It takes more skill, but these are the little nuances that are lost on the people who are making the rules. And they make rules sometimes that are well intentioned, but the consequences, it's unintended consequences.
Right.
And so, that's an important story for people to understand, that sometimes you'll hear the industry pushing back on things that seem very common sense. For the most part, it's not because they're greedy, monsters who are trying to protect their monopoly. That's only Facebook.
Called out the PLA and Facebook. Woo!
We're making some friends today.
Aren't they the same? I thought they were the same. Sorry.
Wow. Just a big dumpster fire.
Oh no, that's TikTok. Never mind. I would say that it's important for people to understand that there are nuances to this stuff, and the right decision is a balance between getting the information out so people can make sure their data is protected and recovered. But it's also so that you don't make the problem worse. It would be like dictating that when a person shows up with a gunshot wound at a hospital, you're required to remove the bullet within 5 minutes of them coming in the door. Well,
right.
They could kill them. You might have to stabilize. They may not have enough blood in them. They might be in shock. It sounds like a good rule, but a doctor would say, oh no, there's a lot of reasons that's a bad rule.
Not practical.
So what would you say is reasonable then, Patrick?
Unfortunately, I think this is kind of like the doctor scenario I just gave you. It depends on the situation. Why don't we let the experts decide? Why don't we have guidelines instead of strict rules? Like for sentencing, we've always found that, sentencing guidelines are better than sentencing mandates. Right. Sentencing mandates typically, end up giving us unfair life sentences for stupid stuff. Whereas sentencing guidelines give judges the ability to kind of use some common sense, which hopefully they usually have.
Right.
So I'd say, unfortunately, it's not, people like simple solutions, and you can have simple solutions, but there was a movie called, what was that? Idiocracy.
Yep, that's right.
I haven't seen it.
Based on the idea that you can just have simple solutions to everything.
Wow.
Well, yeah, and movie's pretty much come true, hasn't it?
Now I'm going to have to watch this movie.
It is turned from a farce to a documentary.
Electrolytes. It's what plants desire. What plants need. So, these are the political conversations. Good news is we haven't said the R word. Well, I did. I actually already did. So never mind.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
even though that's where all the action is.
But who else do we talk about a lot?
Oh, Microsoft.
Oh, Microsoft.
How fragile art thou?
I feel bad for Microsoft sometimes.
So we got a few stories about them. We want to start with the policy one, or we want to go right into the several articles about the 0 day.
Let's do the 0 day in Office, because that's okay. Is that the big one?
Oh my God, yeah, that's
the big one.
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah. The word awesome from Dwayne is always a bad sign.
It's so good, so good. So
tastes great, less filling.
Before we go into this 0 day, which we will delve into a little bit to understand what this means. I mean, we all know what a 0 day is if we've been listening to this podcast. It's something that there's no patch for. But the way that the 0 day works, and like I said, we'll go into it. But the first thing I need to explain is a little bit about protocols. So if you guys know what a protocol handler is, right?
Sure. Well,
we have plenty of them in our normal day-to-day life.
Should we define what a protocol is?
Yeah, I'll do that. I have a really nice metaphor. So a protocol is an agreed upon set of words, phrases, or whatever that two parties use to communicate intent. So, for example, if you go to the Wendy's drive-thru and they say, "Can I take your order?" And you say, "Yes, I would like 2 orange trees, a light bulb, and a pair of pliers," they'll say, "Sir, I'm sorry, this is Wendy's." Do you know what I mean? Yeah, that's an error in the protocol because you're both not speaking the same language.
Carl, knock, knock.
Who's there?
That's a protocol.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Just by saying knock, knock, you have established the fact that we are going to have a conversation using the knock, knock protocol.
And it can't go forward unless you say who's there.
That's right.
So that's the essence. So I think those two analogies get the picture
and the
across.
protocols have to match. We both, if you say knock, knock, and I say Whopper with cheese,
might still be funny, but weird. So now that we have that under our belt, and we sort of understand what a protocol is at the sort of logical level, your computer has tons of protocols, right? Things that it knows to do when certain, actions are taken. So let's now come to this exploit. This exploit is called Felina. Believe it is, I'd have to check to see if it even has a CVE yet, because it is brand new. So at this point, everybody says, the internet is burning, but it's really more, this is a 0 day, so unpatched, exploit of Office documents, where in some cases, it's a 0-click 0 day. You receive an Office document.
That's the worst
you
kind.
You put it on your computer, and literally just by opening the folder that file is sitting in, it will execute code. And in the wild, we've seen PowerShell scripts that download bad things and install them on your computer.
It's bad.
3 days ago, it got a 7.8 out of 10. But that's evolving. This is This is another one of those things that as we open up Pandora's box, we find more things. It's kind of like Log4j was, where there was an initial thing, and then people said, I can use that to do this as well. And then it became a bit of a snowball.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna see a lot of that.
So can you get this just by receiving an email or something, or how does one get it?
If you received an email with a Word attachment, so with a Word document attached to it, if you're viewing it inside of an Office application, it's possible. So let's say you have Outlook open and you click on that document and it's going to preview it. It's possible that it would then at that point run this. And this is non-macro, by the way. So I'll break into how this actually works in a second, but this is not using macros.
But I thought you said it was a 0-click.
Yes. So 0-click is in you don't need to go through and actually run anything. All you need to do is have the document there, and then your computer will try and preview it. Now,
but you still have to load it. Somehow.
Exactly. You don't have to double click on it and open it. You don't need Word to open, because your computer's going to try and preview that document in many different ways.
Right.
Now, if you're like us, I actually turn off all my preview panels and that sort of stuff.
Me
I don't
too.
want a pre-opening of a Word document or a PDF or whatever. Because if it's malicious, I don't want that being exploited.
Right.
So that's something.
Please
you absolutely
open
should
all
turn off.
virus vectors. Thank you. I like that. That's a feature.
Right. It is a feature. It's testing your antivirus programs.
Right.
So what's interesting about this one is with exploiting. You'll probably see it if you ever do any searching on the web or come to our show to click on the links. It's called the MS-MSDT protocol.
Okay.
So MSDT is the Microsoft Diagnostics tool. So Microsoft can send you a link that you can click on that will be MS-MSDT : and then it tells your computer to do something. So we've seen this before. Anybody who's ever used a web browser, you've probably used a protocol before, because you've typed in, well, most people don't anymore, but we used to type in HTTP : HTTP was the protocol that we were telling that computer to use, right? To the browser to use to go grab information over the web. This is MS-MSDT : and then you tell it to do something. And in this case, they could say, hey, what I'd like to do is run a PowerShell script. So you could embed into a Word document this protocol that on preview of the document, whether it's in a preview panel in Explorer window or whether it's you double click on the document and open it, would then run a PowerShell script to do anything the malicious actor wanted. Deploy malware, put rats on your computer, you name it.
All right. So PowerShell, for those who don't know, is a command line tool that when the user has access, right, admin access to the computer, can do anything programmatically. It can contact your cloud computing clusters.
It can configure your Active Directory.
It can configure Active Directory. It can contact your cloud computing applications and shut them down. It can delete everything from your databases. It can just completely wreak havoc, not just on your computers, but any other entities on the internet that you have access to by default. Yeah, geez.
I don't even know. Have you guys seen the pure PowerShell remote desktop?
No.
Oh, this is awesome, especially for like, especially if, all right, if I'm exploiting a system, and let's say I break onto that system and I get on it as an admin, and I don't want to use remote desktop because remote desktop is logged and everybody can see what's going on and see when I connect and that sort of stuff.
Right.
There is a researcher who actually created all of the functionality in the remote desktop server and client in PowerShell. So you run a PowerShell script on the remote hacked computer, and then you run a PowerShell script on your local computer, and you get remote desktop to that box while not using the remote desktop protocol.
Oh my God.
It's so cool. So you can see like everything that's going on, you can control it, but there's no logs that actually say, hey, there's somebody controlling your computer.
Now we have to say that PowerShell is not the vulnerability here. There's no vulnerability in PowerShell. PowerShell is actually very secure, and it's a very good tool. And it was written by a friend of ours, Jeffrey Snover, who's been, speaking at conferences ever since. And we're good friends.
That's cold comfort to those who get hacked via it. It's kind of like the shovel in my closet wasn't meant to be a murder tool. It just happened to be.
Yeah, but you can't be mad at the shovel.
You can't be mad at the shovel. That's right.
I know.
Right.
I know.
Right.
Cars are the same way.
Shovels don't whack people.
People whack people.
With shovels.
Moving off that lie.
You of all people should know about that one, Patrick.
We're treading on dangerous territory.
Yeah. So back to the protocol. So
we should outlaw shovels.
Right.
It's tomahawks.
So back to the protocol. So this Microsoft's recommendation at this point, there's a couple different things you can do.
Yeah.
One, when you not go into sort of super deep technical talk, but when Word or a preview program like File Explorer tries to open this the document, it actually spawns a child process. And there's ways to tell antivirus to not spawn child processes inside a Word. That's one way to protect it. Another way to protect it is these protocols like MS-MSDT are registered in the registry. Now, I know a lot of people probably just glazed over as to the registry in the computer because for years and years and years, Microsoft's told you never touch the registry unless you know what you're doing. However, the registry, Patrick, how would you describe the registry?
It's kind of like it's all the handbook of instructions for how the computer will behave.
It's a database.
Every setting. Yeah. It's a database of all the settings the computer will follow, whether it enables this protocol or that, etc. Like if you disable IP version 6, that's a registry setting.
It's kind of, think of it as like a directory tree, like your File Explorer, except every end file is just a name value pair. Right. So, but all the directories can be named whatever. But when you get inside a folder finally and you want to have files, all the files are just like this value, this name equals this value. This name.
It's the ultimate cookie for Windows.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
And it turns out that it's a real pain in the butt if you want to do anything other than run Windows 95 apps in 1995.
So the registry is an interesting and scary place. However, what Microsoft's recommendation was like, listen, these protocols are all registered inside the registry. You can go in and remove the MS-MSDT registry entry. And now that protocol can't be used anymore.
All you have to do is download this reg edit and run it with security, with elevated security. What could go wrong?
Please don't listen to Carl.
It's like telling somebody open up the back of their TV and cut the red wire, but don't touch the blue wire.
Yeah, don't touch the blue wire. Oh, no, don't touch the blue wire.
So you could go in and do this, and you could stop this particular exploit, but here's what I'm going to tell you. Have you guys ever looked at the protocols that are in Windows?
Oh, yeah.
Some of them,
like, literally just walk through the registry.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. There's so many of them in there.
Right.
Like, if I had to guess, and my team has done this because back when 2021-CVE 2021-40444, remember when we were talking about that a long time ago?
I have no idea.
It was an Office exploit, had zero macros, but would run malicious code. This was probably October of last year. I'd have to look at the.
Oh,
the
yeah.
CVE
I just
dates,
didn't remember the
right?
number. I didn't have that on the tip of my brain. Sorry.
It was the first one in a while. There hadn't been any zero-click exploits for a little while.
And this was like, hey, you could disable macros, but it didn't matter, right? They were also starting to use protocols in there. So my team actually started digging through, and clearly a lot of other teams started digging through the protocols to see what we could do. And there's a lot of cool stuff. We got, Word documents to do that were zero-click, like open up calculator and that sort of stuff.
Was
but
that
nothing
the time
really
you said
malicious.
before the show, hey, Carl, see this link? Go ahead, click on that.
Click it. Yeah, it was. Guys, I sent it. I was like, hey, click this.
And I said, no.
Not happening.
Log4j's originally was an exploit of this type.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it
was calling a protocol.
Right, because it's calling the JNDI protocol. Right. So if you take a look at the protocols that are in there, though, for example, just if you were to go to the HKey class's root / registry key, and you were to go in there and just look at the protocols, there is MS-MSDT. Okay, we know about that one. But then there's MS Photo, MS Phone, MS PowerPoint, MS Word, MS Search, MS Settings, MS Wi-Fi, MS Airplane Mode, MS Configurations, MS Bluetooth. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And if any of those applications that get called with those protocols has an exploit, then any Word document that can call a protocol or any application that can call a protocol could create an issue. So, for example, there is an MS Weather protocol. If all you listeners go to the command prompt and you type start, because this is how you'd kick off a protocol, just like you could say start http://www.google.com and Internet Explorer will pop open or Chrome will pop open and go to google.com. If you say start space MSN weather : // it will open the MSN weather app.
I just tested it and you're absolutely right. You're right.
There are hundreds, if not thousands, of these protocols that are registered on your computer that open up random applications that may be vulnerable. So, it's definitely an arms race here, which actually is proven with our next story.
Go on.
Yeah. And by the way, if you go to a browser and type MSN weather : / Google will say a website wants to open this application.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many apps. And you know what's great about this? Great, I say in air quotes. It's not just Microsoft apps that you install. And there's ways for you to do it specifically with certain apps in the App Store that are different than apps that are just loaded onto your computer. But third-party applications like Steam, for example, if any of you are gamers, and use the Steam platform, Steam has Steam : / and they use that to put a GUID so that they can then load up a game for you.
It gives you a ton of flexibility.
Right.
All right. So sorry about that little diversion. You were asking me about the next story, which is related to this one, and it's just makes what we've just been talking about 100 times worse. 0-day vulnerability in Microsoft Office named Felina will work even when macros are disabled. Uh-oh.
Yeah, and that's one of the tough parts about finding this is because honestly, right now it's super hard to detect because even if you shut off all macros and say I'm not allowing custom code to run, built into the Office document structure is the ability to launch these protocols. It's just something it does. So unfortunately, any of these thousands of protocols that are on your computer, like ms-settings-cellular, could be called, and they could do whatever it is they want to do at that point with, whatever that API is.
But it's interesting to note that the browser actually asked me if it could open it, whereas if I went to the command line where I'm fully qualified, it just opened it.
Does it? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I don't even know why Word doesn't do it, honestly. Like, you would think Word would be just like the browser, where it'd say, hey, this Word document's trying to open an external application. Do you want to allow that?
Right.
I mean, it just doesn't appear to be a thing because it's just natively allowed those protocols to load.
That's why we can't have nice protocols.
That makes it so much better, Patrick. Thank you.
Yeah.
Convenience is the enemy of security.
This is so convenient.
Somebody had said that. So, okay. So what does that mean? How do you protect yourself? You've disabled macros. We learned that. We did it in Excel and in Word.
There is a button on your computer. If you push it and hold it long enough, the computer will shut off and it will then be secure.
True story. True story.
I think. I can't guarantee that.
And the other thing is obviously don't open Office documents.
Yeah.
Even from people you know.
100%, Carl. Yeah.
Is there a sandbox or something that, we could have a virtual machine in the cloud, right?
Yep.
And you could save that Word doc or that Excel, whatever, to local drive, copy it from the Windows Explorer, go up to your VM, paste it, and run it there.
And people could have good passwords. I'm sorry. I thought we were listing things that will never happen. No, you're right. There's ways to do this. It's just we have to make it so it's convenient and easy, or else it's not going to be widespread.
Yeah.
So,
well, and then they take flack for it. Take Windows Defender. Windows Defender has an automatic cloud submission setting. So what you can do is anytime you download a program or a Word doc or whatever, when you go to open it, Windows Defender will actually take that file, submit it to the Defender cloud, and analyze it in a sandbox, and will tell you whether it's malicious or not. But then there's massive amounts of tweets of people saying, hey, you know what, Mike, why should I give all of my files to Microsoft up in the cloud? Or, name XYZ vendor. Now they have all this data and information, whatnot. So it's almost like people want it both ways. I want cutting edge, malware detection, but I never want you to know what I'm actually looking at or opening, et cetera, which is just, it's tough.
Yeah, it's your job to protect me. No, I'm not going to help you.
I'm not going to tell you where I am.
Protect me. I'm not going to give you any. Yeah. Right. So one of the biggest things that people can do in this regard is to have a spam filter that is not just their inbox junk filter. So like we, for example, use AppRiver. They've been pretty good. We're probably due to review them and pick, see if they're still the best that, for our solution. But what that means is about 100 emails a day that would land in my mailbox don't. And I get to go to I get an email every day. I go to that list and I scroll through the list. I look for emails that I recognize. If I recognize the email, then I look at the subject and then I just mass delete them. And so it eliminates a lot of the spam, but it also means there's less chances of these things catching me. And you can even set those settings so that nothing that comes from Russia or China or other places will even get through. And so you can't get hooked by an email you don't see that you never load. And so that's a really good step. The other thing is you set aggressive rules on your trash and your spam filter in clients like Outlook, because they have special controls and extra security precautions. They're not guaranteed, but they're better than if it's in your inbox. There's a lot of things that won't run from your junk folder. And so you need to use those. You need to make sure that the junk doesn't end up in your primary inbox, because that's where all the permissions are.
Yeah. So this next story illustrates that it really isn't PowerShell. PowerShell isn't the only way that this thing can be exploited. As Dwayne said, it's really about the protocols. And protocols can be executed from within Office documents, and that's the problem.
So I'm going to stop you just for a second. So we kind of made jokes about, the PowerShell's not the danger and things like that. But I'm going to go real controversial. So I'm a gun owner, but I'm in favor of registration and licensing and training and all that stuff. PowerShell should not be enabled for an average user, just like administrative tools shouldn't be enabled for an average user.
I thought PowerShell was an administrative tool. It's not.
Yeah, okay, that's a great delineation, Carl, because PowerShell is on every Windows computer, and it is there and it's enabled, and you can use it as a regular user without being an administrator.
But you can't
what you
do
can't
certain
do
things.
is administrative features.
Yeah, right.
But I can tell you all sorts of things you can do as a normal user that can wreck your computer without being an administrator on PowerShell.
Remember the power user? We used to have the power user who was able to do things. I think we need to bring something like that back for PowerShell, where maybe I just go into an app and say, "Hey, I'm gonna use PowerShell. I'm going to knowingly use PowerShell for the next hour. Enable it for me for an hour." Because the problem is you don't know how it's being used on your behalf silently behind the scenes.
Well, we always, probably all three of us use admin access. We probably all have admin access to and run in full admin access, right? So
depends on where I am. Some places yes, some places no.
All right. Well, I think most Windows users do.
Oh yeah.
And so the only real inconvenience we get is the screen goes black and we get the dialog box that says, "Hey, this app wants to do this. Will you allow it?"
Right.
But if you're a user and you try to do something like PowerShell admin stuff, it's going to ask you for the admin password.
Correct.
That's true. But a lot of the things that are being exploited aren't admin stuff, and I'm air quoting here.
All right.
And so that's the problem is it would be kind of like, pick the overkill option. I need to have this thing available that's very dangerous just in case.
Yeah. I think the problem you run into is like, okay, so the recommendation, let's say, okay, the recommendation is maybe we need PowerShell on the computer, but let's turn on, they have different security settings for PowerShell. One of them is called constrained language mode, where you can say, you know what, I'm not going to allow PowerShell to do anything at all. Not really, unless you're a user that has the rights to do that, or you're running from a place that makes sense. So if you're running from the Windows directory, for example, normal users can't write PowerShell scripts to the Windows directory.
Right.
So those have full language, but other PowerShell scripts don't. The problem with even doing something like that, you go, that's secure. Normal user can't write there. But there are applications I can call from there. So I can actually create a C# executable that is an uninstaller, and I can call the uninstall program in Windows, point it at my C# executable, and then have it then run PowerShell, and it'll be in unconstrained mode. So there are ways for hackers to get around all of these types of safeguards. So sometimes you just want to say, you know what, I'm just going to uninstall PowerShell and get rid of it. I don't even know if you can.
I don't think you can.
I was going to say, can you? Yeah, it's too embedded in the system. It's like Internet Explorer was back in the day.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, my point was that it's really about the protocols and being able to access those protocols, right? From not necessarily through PowerShell. Is that true?
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the protocols themselves are system wide, and that's why, one of the examples we had given is, opening up MSN Weather straight from the command prompt. And you weren't launching it as an application, you were launching it as a protocol.
Right. So this next story illustrates that perfectly. The title is New Windows Search 0-Day Added to Microsoft Protocol Nightmare. So we should call this, the Microsoft Protocol Nightmare 0-Day. Really, I mean, that's how you've got to think about it. It's remote execution of protocols, isn't it?
Right. It is. Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many of them to exploit. It'd be like, you guys remember Star Wars? Was it C-3PO was a protocol droid? It would be like if you could ask him secret things like, oh, by the way, give me the codes to this particular rebel base. And he was like, oh, okay, well, you use the special word, rebel base. So absolutely, here it is. The protocol doesn't care who's calling it. The protocol just runs what it's supposed to run when it's supposed to run it.
Yeah.
As long as you follow the rules, it'll do what you tell it.
Right. And in this particular case, this search one isn't as devastating as the MSDT protocol.
Right.
What this does is you can call search-ms : and it will do a search on your local computer, and it can show you files. And I can craft a reasonable story to an end user as to why they'd see this. Maybe I sent them a Word doc that said, hey, Word is vulnerable, whatever, and it pops open a remote drive or a USB share or whatever, a share on the internet that they can then click on a file and it'll run something malicious. Could it happen? Yes. Is it as devastating? No, it's probably not. And there's a lot of social engineering in this. But I think the more important thing about this particular article is you're absolutely right, Carl. The protocols are really where people should be looking. And B, there are thousands of these protocols. We haven't seen the end of this type of attack yet.
No.
We saw the beginnings last year with 40444, and now we're seeing more people delving into the protocols.
And that's why it's called the Microsoft Protocol Nightmare.
It's going to keep coming back.
Yeah.
So we see the ramifications or the fallout from this starting to happen in Azure. So Microsoft has made some announcements that they're going to roll out security defaults to millions of users of their cloud services because they just can't put up with the fact that people aren't turning on basic security, turning on security defaults that are common sense.
So it should be on by default.
They are now. They're turning them on, but for a long time, Microsoft was like, well, this is what you should be doing, but we're going to give you the freedom to do what you want. The problem is Microsoft doesn't want to repeat the cycle where they give you a tool, you poke your eye out with the tool, and then they're blamed for you poking your eye out with the tool.
Right. Yeah.
So now this is probably going to be something that finds its way into their service agreement, their EULA. Because, if you don't secure your stuff, they're not going to let you run it unless they can secure it for you, is what I would expect.
EULA, EULA, End User License Agreement.
Yeah. I don't know if it's already in there.
That thing that you agree to before you use any piece of software that you never read.
Actually, it's probably already in there given that they're doing it.
Yeah. So I get that security defaults are being rolled out for Azure users, but what about regular Windows users?
I don't think that's where they're going right now.
Until you get to like Windows 11, because honestly, Windows 11, I've done my damnedest to turn off Windows Defender, and not because it's not a great product. It's actually a fantastic product. It's because I create so much malware in my day job. I can't have Windows stealing it from me. And honestly, it's gotten it sounds so wrong. It's gotten to the point where I create a VM of Windows 10 and I shut off Defender and everything on that. And I just develop all my malware on that now because on Windows 11, it's just too much of a pain in the butt to shut it off.
Okay.
So I think we're going to start to see that happen.
Let's clarify that. When Windows detects malware, it submits it to its database so that it can be detected around the world.
Yes.
And Dwayne doesn't want his stuff detected around the world until he's had his fun with it.
I don't think that makes it any better, Patrick, but thank you.
I didn't want to make it better for you. I wanted to make it better for the listener.
Oh, that's funny.
Fair enough.
All right, guys. I think that's a show. Are we wrapping up?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. Time flies.
Yeah. Careful with the protocols.
Tempus fugit.
Yep. All right. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.